In the vast, sun-bleached expanse of Montana's Big Sky country, where the wind whispered secrets through the golden wheat fields and the Rocky Mountains stood sentinel like ancient guardians, Elena Vargas arrived broken and adrift. It was a sweltering July afternoon in 2023, her beat-up sedan coughing dust along the gravel road to Willow Creek Ranch, the only place her late grandmother's faded letter had promised solace. Elena, a 32-year-old graphic designer from the relentless grind of Chicago, had fled a life unraveling at the seams, a toxic marriage shattered by betrayal, a career devoured by corporate greed, and a soul starved for something real. As she crested the hill, the ranch unfolded before her like a painting come alive, weathered red barns, a herd of chestnut horses grazing lazily, and a lone figure on horseback silhouetted against the horizon. That figure was Jack Harlan, the rancher whose calloused hands would soon rewrite her story, one gentle touch at a time. Jack was 38, broad-shouldered and weathered by decades under the unrelenting sun, his Stetson hat casting shadows over eyes the color of storm-tossed sagebrush. He'd inherited Willow Creek from his father, a man who taught him that land wasn't just dirt and fences, it was legacy, stitched with sweat and stories. Divorced young, with no children to carry the Harlan name, Jack poured his heart into the ranch, mending fences and nursing orphan foals with the same quiet tenderness. He wasn't one for crowds or city lights, the ranch was his world, a sanctuary of self-reliance where kindness wasn't a grand gesture but the steady rhythm of showing up. When Elena's car sputtered to a halt at the ranch gate, its radiator hissing like a cornered snake, Jack rode up without a word, dismounting with the grace of a man who'd danced with the wind 1,000 times. "Looks like she's thirsty," he said, his voice low and gravelly, like the rumble of distant thunder. He popped the hood, his fingers, rough from reins and ropes, brushing hers as he handed her a rag. In that fleeting contact, something electric stirred in Elena, a warmth that chased away the chill of her isolation. For the first time in years, the world's chaos faded, leaving only the scent of leather and earth. Over the next weeks, Elena stayed on as a guest in the ranch's old bunkhouse, her grandmother's letter granting her a summer's grace before the land passed to distant kin. Jack didn't pry into her silences, instead, he invited her into his rhythm. Mornings began with the crack of dawn, saddling up for rides across meadows dotted with wild lupin, where Jack's stories unfolded like the landscape itself. He'd point out the eagle's nest high in the ponderosa pines, explaining how the mother bird taught her young to soar not with force, but with trust in the updraft. "Life's like that," he'd say, his hand steadying her on the saddle, "you gotta let go to rise." Elena, whose hands trembled from sketching frantic deadlines back in the city, found herself laughing again, genuine, belly-deep laughs that echoed off the canyon walls. One evening, as they mended a split-rail fence under a sky bleeding orange and pink, a splinter caught her palm, drawing blood. Jack knelt without hesitation, his touch feather-light as he cleaned the wound with water from his canteen. "Hold still, darlin'. Pain's just a teacher, not the boss." His fingers lingered, tracing the lines of her hand like he was reading a map to buried treasure. In that moment, Elena forgot the divorce papers yellowing in her glove box, the emails piling up like unpaid debts. The world shrank to the space between them, his kindness a balm that soothed scars she hadn't known were still bleeding. Their connection deepened in the quiet ways of ranch life, where selflessness wasn't preached but lived. Jack rose before the roosters to feed the strays, a limping coyote pup he'd bottle-raised after finding it orphaned by a storm, or the widow Mrs. Ellis down the road, whose arthritis kept her from her garden. Elena watched, mesmerized, as he'd load her porch with fresh eggs and heirloom tomatoes, never asking for thanks. "Folks are like fences," he'd tell Elena over coffee on the wraparound porch, steam rising like morning mist. "They need mending before they break." Inspired, she began to help, her city-soft hands blistering as she hauled hay bales or weeded the herb patch. One afternoon, a sudden squall rolled in from the west, black clouds devouring the sun like a hungry beast. Lightning cracked the sky, and thunder shook the earth as Elena's horse spooked, bucking her into a muddy creek bed. She hit the water hard, the current tugging at her like vengeful fingers, her ankle twisting in the rocks. Panic clawed her throat, visions of drowning in more than just the flood, of her life slipping away unnoticed. Then, Jack was there, wading in chest deep, his arms wrapping around her waist with unyielding strength. "I've got you," he murmured, his breath hot against her ear, pulling her to safety. As he carried her back to the ranch, rain plastering his shirt to his muscled frame, his hand cupped her cheek, thumb brushing away a tear mixed with river water. "You're safe now. Let the storm pass." In his embrace, Elena realized the profound truth. His touch wasn't just physical, it was a promise, a selfless anchor in her sea of doubt. That night, by the fire's glow, she kissed him first, tentative, then fierce, their lips meeting like dry earth craving rain. Love bloomed there, wild and untamed, making her forget the world entirely. But fate, that cruel architect of trials, had other plans. It came in the form of a letter, crisp and official, arriving on a crisp September morning as aspens turned to fire along the creek. Elena's ex-husband, Victor, had contested her grandmother's will, claiming fraud and demanding the ranch's sale to settle old debts. Worse, hidden in the fine print was a lien on Willow Creek itself, Victor's underhanded maneuver from years ago, when he'd co-signed a loan Elena had forgotten in her haze of grief. The ranch, Jack's lifeblood, teetered on the edge of auction, and Elena was the unwitting villain in its downfall. Guilt crashed over her like the creek in flood. She'd brought this curse, her city's shadows eclipsing the ranch's light. "I can't stay," she whispered to Jack that evening, as they sat on the porch swing creaking under the weight of unspoken fears. "This place is your heart. I won't be the one to carve it out." Jack's face hardened, not with anger, but a quiet resolve that masked his terror. The ranch wasn't just land, it was his father's ghost in every fence post, his mother's laughter in the wind chimes. Losing it would unravel him. Yet, as Elena packed her bags by lantern light, he pulled her into his arms, his touch fierce and forgiving. "You didn't bring the storm, Elena. You brought the sun." But doubt gnawed at her. How could love survive when she'd poisoned its roots? The unexpected turn came swiftly, a moment of profound realization that shattered Elena's self-imposed exile. Days after her departure, wildfires erupted across Montana, fueled by drought and winds that howled like banshees. The blaze jumped the interstate, devouring forests and ranches in its path, Willow Creek squarely in its jaws. News alerts blared on Elena's phone in a Billings motel, evacuations, ash-choked skies, and Jack's name in a frantic call from a neighbor. "He's not leaving," the voice crackled. "Says the land's worth fighting for." Heart pounding, Elena raced back, the sedan a blur through smoke-hazed roads, her mind a whirlwind of regret and resolve. She arrived at dusk to a hellscape, flames licking the horizon, embers swirling like malevolent fireflies, the air thick with the acrid bite of destruction. Jack stood at the ranch's edge, hosing down the barn with a puny stream from the well pump, his face streaked with soot, eyes burning with defiance. The fire crew had pulled back, calling it a lost cause, but Jack refused to abandon the strays, the coyote pup now a lanky yearling, the horses stamping in terror, even the faded photographs of his parents pinned inside the house. "Go, Elena," he shouted over the roar, spotting her silhouette. "It's too late." But she didn't flee. Instead, she grabbed a shovel, joining him in the futile dance against the inferno, her hands blistered anew, tears carving clean paths through the grime on her cheeks. As the fire crowned the ridge, leaping closer with predatory grace, an unexpected ally emerged from the chaos, a helicopter from the volunteer fire service, its rotors thumping like a heartbeat. But it carried more than water drops. Aboard was Victor, of all people, transformed by the blaze's impartial fury. Stranded in Billings during a business trip, he'd seen the news, recognized the ranch's name tied to Elena's past, and for the first time, glimpsed the wreckage of his own selfishness. No longer the slick lawyer hiding behind legalese, Victor had bartered his way onto the chopper, clutching the will's documents. Landing amid the maelstrom, he thrust them at Elena through the downdraft. "Sign this," he yelled, voice raw. "I release the lien. The ranch is yours, free and clear." It was an act born of revelation, his eyes meeting hers not with malice, but a hollow plea for redemption. I was wrong, L.